Welcome to Lesson 25, Americans Vocabulary. Your essential questions for today are, how can understanding vocabulary help us to comprehend passages we read? And what are some vocabulary words associated with Americans in the Great Depression? By the end of this lesson, you should be able to define 8 vocabulary words from Americans in the Great Depression and understand how these vocabulary words are used within the context of the passage. So go ahead and take a moment to pause this lesson, grab some paper and a pencil, and take notes as we go through these 8 words. The first vocabulary word is called Hoovervilles. Hoovervilles was named after President Herbert Hoover. These were shanty towns of temporary shelters that impoverished or poor people built during the Great Depression. Another definition for Hoovervilles would be a collection of huts and shacks, as at the edge of a city, housing the unemployed during the 1930s. Your synonyms, or words that mean the same, would be shack, hut, and temporary housing. Throughout your reading of Americans in the Great Depression, you will see selected passages throughout this PowerPoint. So let's take a look at the word Hoovervilles used within the reading. Sometimes men who left to look for work never came back, finding homes in doorways or subways, or the communities of shacks on the edges of cities, or landfills that soon enough Americans learned to call Hoovervilles. And if you take a look at the picture, you will see an example of Hoovervilles. Many shacks on the edge of a city close together, and most of these people that live in these shacks were unemployed and no longer had a home. The second vocabulary word is breadwinner. A breadwinner is a person who earns a livelihood, especially one who also supports dependents. Think about your parents. One of your parents goes to work and earns money. They would be considered the breadwinner. In some households, both parents work, and so they would both be considered the breadwinner. Here are some example sentences using the word breadwinner. My dad, John, was the breadwinner in our house. He went to work 6 days a week and kept food on our table. The second sentence example: in today's economy, there is typically more than one breadwinner. Both husbands and the wives need to have full-time jobs to survive. Some synonyms are job holder, worker, and provider. Take a look at these pictures of these men working out in the fields together, working for their families to provide and put food on the table. The next vocabulary word that we're going to look at is disproportionately. And disproportionately is an adverb of the word disproportionate. The definition means out of proportion, as in size or number. Synonyms would be unequal, excessive, or uneven. If you take a look at this picture, all of these men look the same. They're around the same age, the same height and build, and they're all white men. So let's take a look at it in the context. Increasingly, they hired or kept on white men with work experience, leaving the young and old, the women, and the African Americans disproportionately represented among the unemployed. So again, it means unequally represented. In this picture, they are all the same type of men. There are no really old men or men of color. The next word is frivolous, defined as unworthy of serious or sensible treatment, unimportant. Your synonyms would be foolish, silly, or carefree. Let's look at how these photos represent the word frivolous. Before the crash, As women first entered the workforce in significant numbers, Americans already found it easy to believe that if a woman worked, she was doing it for frivolous spending money. That properly, women would rely on men who, as head of households, would supply their wives and children with a living. So, the assumption was that these women who worked were just doing it to spend money excessively on things that were not necessary. The next word we're going to take a look at is solicitude. Solicitude is in a state of having anxiety or concern. Highly stressful, life-threatening, anxiety-producing events, wars, large-scale disasters, assassinations. Some of the synonyms for solicitude would be worry, care, unease. So if you take a look, here's a paper, and they're representing some of the events that happened during the stock market crashing. And you can also see a picture of the Dust Bowl there, where there's a large cloud of dust behind the buildings. And down below, I put a collage of words: depression, anxiety, panic attack, pain. Solicitude represents these things. This is a very highly stressful time, and there are lots of things that cause this. So let's look at the word in context. The object of American solicitude became the imperiled white male head of household, whose hardship they could understand as the nation's concern. So what this means is everybody had this anxiety, this worry, this care, because this was a highly stressful time. And this was a state of mind that people were in. So Americans' solicitude or anxiety or concern because of these challenging and trying times. The next word is Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl, also known as the Dirty 30s, was a period of severe dust storms that greatly damaged the ecology and agriculture of the U.S. and Canadian prairies during the 1930s. Severe drought and a failure to apply dryland farming methods to prevent wind erosion caused the phenomenon. Or another word for phenomenon would be the event, the occurrence, or this strange thing that's happening. So here's some examples of what the Dust Bowl looked like. As you can see, huge clouds, sometimes ranging 10,000 feet high of dust. They often would nickname these black blizzards. And as you can see, there's a picture of several people trying to walk through the dust storm. As you can see, it's hard to work or to walk, let alone to work in something like this. The next word is frugal. The noun for frugal would be frugality. Economical in use or expenditure, prudently saving or sparing, not wasteful, living without waste. Some synonyms would be thrifty, penny-wise, and scrimping. Okay, think about a time where maybe you were frugal with your spending. You were trying to save money. And so think about all of the different ways that you tried to do this. Maybe you didn't go out to dinner as much. Maybe you didn't buy that new pair of shoes that you wanted. And so you tried to be frugal in your spending, only unless it was absolutely necessary. On the right, there's a saying: make it do, wear it out, use it up, or do without. And this was a saying actually that my grandmother used to say back in this time period. And in context in your reading, let's take a look at how frugality is used. As a result of living through the Depression, some people developed habits of careful saving and frugality. Others determined to create a comfortable lives for themselves. So many people saved and scrimped as much as they could and would use things until they were no longer usable. That way they didn't have to buy anything new. Prevalence. This is a noun. Prevalent is an adjective. And prevalence means happening often or over a large area at a particular time. It means common or widespread. Some synonyms would be commonness, popularity, or standard. If you take a look at the example sentence, it says, there was a prevalence of unemployment in the Great Depression. That means this was common. It was common, widespread, to see many people who were unemployed. This was something that was sort of a standard at the time. This is something that was happening all over the place. All right, so here's your checklist. After you have taken all of your notes, I want you to think, can you define the 8 vocabulary words in this lesson? And do you know how to use these vocabulary words in a sentence? And do you know how these vocabulary words relate to the reading of the Great Depression, especially Americans in the Great Depression? If you can do these things, answer the questions below this video. Have a great day.